Australia makes our rules for things you can do in Australia. That's done in our parliament, it's done by our government, and that's how things work here in Australia. And people who want to work with that in Australia, you're very welcome. But we don't respond to threats.
What does Seven West's deal with Google signal an end to this war of words? I'm now joined by Dennis-Kenji Kipker. He is the Scientific Managing Director at the Institute for Information, Health and Medical Law over at the University of Bremen. All right, good to have you on the show, Dennis. A lot to cover briefly. How did we get to this point? Because at one point, Australians were on the brink of actually losing access to Google search.
Yeah, according to the current wording of the new Australian law, Google would have to pay Australian publishers a so-called license fee to display their content as a preview in search results. And the company would have to, for this reason, negotiate the amount of the license fee separately with each publisher. And if no agreement could be reached here, a neutral arbitration court would decide. And Google criticizes the fact that an arbitration court would hardly be able to assess the value of the content. And this would, of course, represent an incalculable risk for the whole company. And the new Australian media law also provides for royalties for previews, as well as fees for links. And for example, Google says that the links for which we must pay are so poorly defined by this law that it is not clear to us what is included. So the law only states that links that provide a benefit to Google and Facebook are covered. And Google says that without links and previews, the operation of the search engine would not be possible. And according to the company, royalties therefore undermine the basic principles that we know from the internet.
Okay, another thing that the code or the law says is that private media companies can actually strike deals with companies, in this case Google, and this way sort of Google can actually avoid paying these government-imposed fees. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on sort of Google avoiding these fees.
Yeah, certainly this is likely to be a better solution than before this law for many publishers and media companies, since they can profit directly from the contracts concluded with the search engine operator. But however, in my opinion, it may be questionable whether such a solution is actually suitable for all producers of news content in the internet. Especially smaller companies in particular could quickly reach the limits here, for example, with regard to legal issues. And it is also questionable, in my opinion, whether all companies are in equal economic negotiation position vis-a-vis to Google, so or whether they are not more likely to enter into individual contracts that ultimately offer more disadvantages than personal advantages for these little and medium-sized companies.
I'm wondering if you think that laws like this is actually the solution when it comes to social media and how people actually access their news. And when you think of it, sort of like the declining of advertising revenue, especially when it comes to smaller news outlets.
Yeah, for some time now, small and local newspapers in particular have been suffering from fewer and fewer subscribers and readers. And this is not, I think this is not a specifically Australian problem. It's a global problem. And for this reason, it is also not a problem directly related to Google or any other search engine operator. It is also the case that local news in particular is read or watched less by young people and more by older people. And many of them resort to conventional delivery channels such as print media or television. So Google may not reach as many relevant customers. And many local news companies have failed to establish new business models here in the recent years. And this is now taking revenge, of course. And Google is, in my opinion, the best example of this situation that we face currently.
Very fascinating developments there. All right, Dennis, we're going to have to leave it there from the University of Bremen. Thank you very much.